Let's call this meeting to order. Roll call.
McKnight, Myers.
Here.
Roa.
Here.
Vogel.
Here.
Kinder.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, public comment on agenda items.
None.
Okay. Notice of executive session meetings.
None.
Approval of minutes, September 17th, 2024, regular meeting minutes. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call.
McKnight, Myers,
Aye.
Roa,
Aye.
Vogel,
Aye.
Kinder.
Aye. Communication.
None.
Manager's report.
Just a couple items, right to know requests, 49 right to know requests, $2,800 in fees. General city updates, the Harvest Festival, it's the first annual Harvest Festival. This will be October 12th, it's a Saturday, running from 10 until 3 p.m. This is a collaboration between the city, the Market House, FCCA, and CHAPS. I have flyers, if anybody wants to look at the things happening. There will be pigs, little piggies, a petting zoo, a pumpkin patch, hay rides. FCCA is going to do a breakfast. The Unitarian Church is still going to have their soup on Saturdays. They will also have a haunted dungeon, showing Halloween movies. Market House will have a cider press. Costawago Creek will be there. A couple different food vendors, pumpkin painting contest. People will be able to pick up their pumpkins at the pumpkin patch, go over to the Unitarian Church to paint them, and then later that day, they'll be judged down at the Market House for anybody interested in that. As you saw in the paper, I'm sure, $1.1 million SAFER grant to the fire department for firefighter hiring. Only the city of Meadville and Mill Creek received that funding this year for hiring of firefighters. And then the last update is Heidi Cooper Park is still on track for mid-October opening. Just keep a lookout for the exact date of that. Yep.
Right on. Thank you, Mary Ann. Do you have
So
a question?
the SAFER grant, are we looking, I think it was in the article, would it increase the number of firefighters on each shift to 4?
It does increase the number of firefighters, yes, to 4 fighters per shift.
So that means how many new hires?
It's 4 new hires total, so there's 3 shifts. There'll be one kind of floater to fill in on and to decrease overtime for that, but it covers for 3 years entire wages and fringes for those firefighters that were hired.
That's fantastic. All right. New business, discussion, public nuisance ordinance.
Turn that over to Peter.
Thank you, Council. I bring this before you as what I think is just a bit of housekeeping, sharing the same space and conversations with our property maintenance inspectors and conversations in our code enforcement department. In a bit of my research and looking into how we can address nuisance properties that pose hazards to the public or by whatever cause are just noxious and detrimental to neighborhoods, and to have a way for the city to intervene in them without resorting to a lengthy, cumbersome, and sometimes ineffective process of eminent domain. In 2015, the third-class city code was recodified to include amendments providing for updated procedures and processes for public nuisance abatement, but very, very specifically, that term public nuisances must be used in and established in processes by local ordinance, and local ordinance need to designate a specific department to whom reports of public nuisances can be directed so they can conduct investigations and then follow the other processes by the third-class city law in order to abate them. I'll give you a sample of an ordinance that might bring up our municipal code to the third-class city laws powers, allowing us to exercise abatement of public nuisances. It's just a draft at this point. It has not been reviewed extensively by you yet or by our city solicitors, so this is just a template and foundation on which to base. I'm just asking for your opinions, your values, and if you reach a consent to move forward and pursue these amendments, that as well. But the ordinance itself is not, not ready for presentation for consideration, just to be clear about that.
And just for a little more context, so if first, this ordinance would have been in place, 699 Pine Street, which has been an issue for various reasons, could have helped to streamline the process of demolition on that property. So that was a little bit of the motivating factor behind the establishment of this ordinance. Peter, if they have any questions or comments, just direct those to you individually.
Mhm.
If, they don't have anything at the moment.
Yeah, as always, I'm happy to accept those from you individually at any time.
And again, Peter, what are you looking at? What are you looking for from us tonight?
Just if you have anything to discuss publicly amongst yourselves, whether you think this is a good thing to pursue or not, to table, to move forward, or to pursue aggressively, sort of whether you wish to have such an ordinance quickly rather than slowly without deliberation, if what you see is not without deliberation. On a preferred timeline, anything of that sort.
Okay.
So if we adopt this ordinance, we then we're giving ourselves the power that third-class cities have to do this. And if it were in place, would we, first of all, what's the body? Is it code enforcement that we're saying would be?
Yes, you would
So-
have to designate that the Department of Code Enforcement would be the administrative body for this, yeah.
And is it, are we thinking that code enforcement would consider in their rounds public nuisance, or would be more reactive, like folks could submit a complaint, or, and get
Yeah.
something kind of named as a public nuisance?
The state law says that anybody can report a suspected public nuisance to the department for its investigation. The department itself would investigate that and corroborate whether there is in fact such a thing as a public nuisance according to local law. So, again, even though I know that the code enforcement department is generally on board with this, we have not figured out what the precise procedures would be until we're confident that we'll have an ordinance in place.
And then I think an important distinction to make with this ordinance rather than an eminent domain action that we've done in the past through the redevelopment authority is that the city would not own these properties. Correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but the properties are in custody of the city until the issue is abated. And at that point then, if the house required a demolition, we demo the home, that abates it, and then we lien the property or attach a judgment to an individual, the owner of the property, however that works, but the city never actually exercises any kind of title transfer.
That's correct.
Peter, would this obviate the need for the Blighted Property Review Committee and Appeals Board, or would it be supplemental to it?
It would be supplemental to it. One of the criteria for the Blighted Property Review Committee to determine a property is blighted is specifically that the property is any premises which has been declared a public nuisance. So the need for the Blighted Property Review Committee in order to exercise eminent domain over properties that require it would and should still be in place.
Okay, so the nuisance is declared before blighted property, not the other way around.
It can be either way.
Okay.
It's a matter of decision-making, what should rise to the level of eminent domain or not. So abatement doesn't have to be limited to things that take entire possession of a property. If there is a property that has a level of debris, junk, abandoned cars, dangerous dumping grounds on it, that can be abated through the public nuisance ordinance without any need to go for the Blighted Property Review Committee for eminent domain. It's not a property that would require it, just want the junk cleaned up.
Thank you for saying that, because that was my next question, right? Like, how small, right? Like, how small does this go, right? Is it, you know, a hole in the sidewalk? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, how small of an issue does this go to that can be remedied and then? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That will also be a matter of wisdom and discretion. Obviously, there are some things that should not arise under this. In our current ordinance, sometimes there are things that are called public nuisances, which would not need all these powers. I think like a tree hanging over the sidewalk, obstructing travel for less than 7 foot clear is considered a public nuisance. Rain or snow falling onto a sidewalk from an adjacent house that like impedes travel, we call that, as possibly considering a public nuisance. That's not necessarily where we want to exercise this. Specifically, the state law says a public nuisance is conduct or property or the condition or use of property defined or declared to be a public nuisance under any provision of this part or other law. Conduct of property or the condition or use of property if the department determines that it endangers the health or safety of or causes hurt, harm, inconvenience, discomfort, damage, or injury to a person or property in the city by the conduct of property or the condition of use of property being any of the following: a menace, threat, or hazard to the general health and safety of the community, a fire hazard, a building or structure that is unsafe for occupancy or use, a property that is so inadequately or insufficiently maintained that it diminishes or depreciates the enjoyment and use of other property in its immediate vicinity to the extent it is harmful to the community, or unauthorized accumulations of garbage, rubbish, and the unauthorized storage of abandoned or junked automobiles or other vehicles on public or private property, and the carrying on of any offensive manufacture or business. Cracks in the sidewalk and overhanging trees, not so much, unless they are of an extent that we actually wish to use these powers. Tree falls over a sidewalk,
So
that'll be different.
then, if, let's say we did this ordinance and all of that, so then would we use different words, right? Like, you know, go back and kind of use different words for those less.
I would wish so.
Okay, I because, you know, again, words mean things and we want to make sure that we're differentiating what we're doing here.
Yes.
But, okay.
Relatedly, can we, whether it's those words or other words, can we put those words in the ordinance? So right now, public nuisance is not really defined, it just like cites state law, which I think would be, I don't know, if we can bake whatever that state law is in here, that would be easier for folks to reference and like know what it is we're talking about.
Yes, I understand.
So, just, I want to make sure that I'm understanding. So in the case of 699 Pine Street, that house there was a fire and there's been complaints about the condition of that home and pests, rodents, like neighbors have concerns. I imagine that that code enforcement has cited it many times. It's owned by a bank that is not in the state. It's like we're not seeing any movement. There is a blighted property review committee meeting scheduled, but just the timing of things just takes so long that in the interim, it just sits as it is. And if we had this ordinance on the books, we would be able to board the windows and do whatever without taking ownership of the property. We would just be able to just fix the immediate things that need to be fixed while the process with blighted property review or whatever other committee moves forward. Is that?
Well, with the ordinance, we could abate without having to go down necessarily the rabbit hole of the blighted property review committee certification by them, the planning commission, then transfer it to RDA, where RDA then has to take an action of eminent domain and go through that entire process. This ordinance would allow that process to be more streamlined and shorten it. That would be the best hope, yes.
So like if there's a property, I can't think of one, but where eminent domain would be the right thing for that particular property, that process can still happen. But like with 660 or 699 Pine, where we don't necessarily, that's okay to just be addressed right now and then
Correct.
either move through that process or get it fixed up more permanently later. Okay, that makes
And-
sense.
And to clarify my position too, I just might use that as an example, and we're not discussing today, we're just possibilities and the powers that we can exercise in those circumstances. This is not a public promise that we'll be able to do those things so simply in 699 Pine or any other place.
Right, no, I appreciate that clarification. It helps me with a
Yeah.
layperson
Yeah.
to know, like, there's a property in front of us that we're thinking about, and it's been a complicated process, and so
Yeah.
certainly not for that one, but
Yeah.
in the future, it's good to have the tools, I guess.
The goal is to be able to fix dangerous things that pose a threat to the safety and comfort of our community without the delay that we would incur in trying to do eminent domain, which would then just extend the length of time that the threat and hazards continue.
Peter, you and I talked on a couple issues earlier this evening. I'm definitely interested in pursuing the ordinance in some shape or form. I'm looking at it as a way to facilitate the process of abatement and solving problems. I'm not interested in weaponizing the city because someone has a grudge against a neighbor. And that's what I do worry about, the balance, as you said, using good judgment.
Mhm. Yeah. I like to think that with that attitude, for what I hear before, that we'd be much more careful about what really is a public nuisance rather than a minor inconvenience. And hope that something like this would be, with all the checks in place, which does include an appeals process, which does in some circumstance require elected officials to give public sign-off on it, that it would be used wisely. However, that is also a concern that I would share, because I trust myself more than I trust other people, and I'm sure you do too.
Question for our solicitor. I'm catching you unawares, Tim, I apologize. But in the case of persistent nuisances, is there any way to get leverage and maybe take it beyond the civil stage and possibly even to a criminal offense?
It depends on how the enforcement provisions are written in the third-class city code. I have to go back and take a look at them. Sometimes the authorizing legislation gives the ability to take it as a summary offense. Sometimes it does not. So sometimes it gives you an option. I'd have to go back and take a look at the public nuisance provisions of third class city code and see exactly what it says.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for pointing that out, right, like weaponizing that. We also don't want to make sure that this ordinance is weaponized against poverty either, right? Like, so criminalizing some things that are, you know, due to lack of funds. I also don't want to see it be used that way either. So thanks, Tim, for looking into that, and Jim for bringing that up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, two more things. So it does look like there is an appeal process. There would be an appeals board that would be established to hear appeals. So that's a little bit of a backstop for these, you know, concerns about weaponization. That's not a question, I guess. Do you have anything to say about that? Is the question.
No.
An appeals board, right? Is that, I'm reading that right? Okay.
An appeals board of city council members, which would put you personally and the appeals board on the hook for a wise consideration of an appeal of public nuisance.
An appeals board of city council members?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, and that is different than the blighted property?
it's the same word.
Can it be the same?
Yep, the blighted,
You can-
appeals of blighted property determinations are to be addressed in the same manner as appeals of public nuisances
By the same
by state
people?
law. Yep.
By the same board. We're saying
We
we
don't
could
have to
have one
establish
board, we
another
don't have to
thing.
have-
The blighted property review laws state that appeals are to be heard by the public nuisance board established pursuant to the third class city code. So the appeal that was heard was what the public nuisance appeals board would be. The city had not yet officially adopted it. So now
So we
this.
had to name people
You
instead?
had to name people and do
From
that to
council.
serve in that function, to allow for the appeals to go through from the Blighted Property Review Commission. Creation of this board would codify that function as well. It's the same group.
Great, that helps.
And you haven't had a chance to look at this, Tim? Or you have?
No,
No, okay.
I'm making notes as we speak.
The costs incurred to abate nuisances, where does that come from? I imagine that also is gonna be an incentive for us to use discretion and judgment. but-
So there is, part of this, from memory, the costs incurred would be the actual costs of whatever contractor would charge for it, plus a 10% administrative fee not to exceed 10% of the cost of the abatement. As with everything, the abatement actions should not be excessive and be no more than would be required to handle the nuisance or the hazard. That is a matter of discretion for the department to determine what is the necessary amount of abatement to use at any one time. But it does allow for you to recoup the costs through the sale of any salvaged materials, through personal assignment of those costs to the owner of the property. And if that's not paid, then as a lien on to the property. As with everything, there's no guarantee you'll get your money back, but
The hazard
That's
will
just-
be
that's just it,
remediated.
yeah.
Yeah.
Peter, did you say that you might possibly consider a lien against both the property and the owner?
Yes, to quote, word for word, notwithstanding the right of the city to use, the city to utilize in rem proceedings to pursue collection of the costs, fees, and penalties in the statement of costs of the municipal claim. In rem, correct me if I'm wrong, means against the property, referring to property liens. The person who is the owner of the property at the time of a summary abatement at which the notice required is given, or in case of an abatement pursuant to Section 127.804 relating to prior notice of abatement, the person who was the owner of the property at the time notice of the existence of a public nuisance was given shall be personally liable for the amount of the assessment, including all interest, other charges, and except in the section relating to notice of assessment and appeal charges, civil penalties.
So in the case of a burned out structure, we'd be looking at escrowed funds from fire insurance, assuming there is any, and possibly having an organization like RDA raise the property as part of blight removal.
I assume,
Like CDBG, using CDBG money, would that be an option?
I believe that would still be an option. Yes, so the fire escrow funds can be used for the costs that the city incurs in the removal of a property. Having a fire escrow fund, to my understanding, does not necessarily give you any more power, any additional power beyond all the other powers we have like this, to actually intervene in property. It's just, I understand it as just the financial security against it. So if they don't demolish it, keep the funds. We demolish it, we have to exercise our powers that we're given, and then we can use the fire escrow. And even our local ordinance says that that does not prohibit us from any recovery of any deficiency of the escrow to handle the costs. But that's, again, options.
Yeah, so, I mean, Jim, you bring up demo, would we go that far for abatement? Or like we would eminent domain a property and demolish it, right? You can't just.
It depends on the issue. I mean, if you have a burnt-out shell of a home with one wall standing that has the potential to land on a sidewalk that is a safe walking to schools route,
Demolition can be considered
you
abatement.
might just go through with demolition for abatement. I mean, it's so fact-specific, we're never gonna be able to game out every possibility. I mean, it could be as simple as having an exterminator go out to catch rats and other vermin or whatever and close that down, or, you know, board up windows, take abandoned cars that have sharp broken glass and abate that to make sure that it's not an attractive nuisance for a child or, you know, person to go and play in the car and get harmed. You know, go and lock old refrigerators so people can't get stuck in those. You know, whatever the issue is, this is an important blight remediation, blight prevention, public harm abatement tool that is available to you. And of course, the weaponization of that is always a concern. And that's why you have oversight over your city manager, who has oversight over the code enforcement office, to make sure that that doesn't happen. You set the direction and the expectation for the city manager in which to manage those departments, and if it gets out of hand, you take the necessary action. And any appeals that would come from the decisions of the code enforcement office would go directly to that property nuisance board, which is made up of city council members, so you would see the direct concerns that your residents would have regarding the enforcement of that. So you've got some pretty good oversight on this issue. And you know, we're happy to work with Peter to make sure that this ordinance, which I looked at it, I thought I wrote it, it was so well done. We'll take a look and do a deeper dive into it to make sure it's in good shape for you.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm
For the
curious-
record, I have a degree in music.
Oh. Yeah.
What does that say about me?
I wonder how you guys, like, where is that on the urgency scale? You know, because you did mention that, like, do you have a sense, like anything, like, I'm feeling like it's top, is it? You asked, that was the question you asked, so I was just wondering.
To chime in, ever since I arrived at the job in 2022, I've been able to look at a few of the buildings around town that are deserving of interior inspections and structural inspections that we do not have the ability to have a code enforcement officer go in to inspect to make sure that they're not going to collapse within the next year or two. That is, to make sure that they're not going to cause a lot of harm to the neighboring properties or the neighboring homeowners within the time period that would be necessary to go through eminent domain.
And this ordinance will facilitate interior inspection.
If there's probable cause to inspect the interior, we can apply for administrative warrants. Otherwise, it allows us, as with other code enforcement, to pursue contact with the owner of record and request access on the inside. We're not in control of whether we do get those administrative warrants or not, except to the degree that we can put together a case based on the facts.
Would the procedure for obtaining those warrants be embodied in this ordinance, or is there other?
No, that, if I can answer that.
Yeah.
So, that is an extraordinary situation. Administrative warrants are governed by the courts. There are court rules for the process through which to get administrative warrants. The city can only inspect the interior of a property if there's probable cause of an ordinance violation related to the health and safety of the occupants within there. And it is the same standard that the police would use to gain a warrant of probable cause to search a property, because it is an administrative search of the property, which is subject to the protections of the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizure.
Right.
So I don't want anybody to think that this is something that the city would ever take lightly, or the city would ever perform on a whim or without adequate legal review. It is an extraordinary circumstance that would have to be reviewed carefully and have the engagement of the courts in order to have proper authorization to go into those homes. So it's a long way of saying unlikely.
Okay.
Gretchen, was your question about kind of timing
Yeah.
for us?
Yeah, how, if everyone's like, is it by year end, is it, yeah, what the, yeah, because that was your question, part of it. If, are we gonna do this? It seems like we kind of are thinking it's a good thing, I think, yeah.
I'm only suggesting that this is a tool to have in the toolbox at the ready when the extraordinary circumstances
Yeah.
arise that you would have to rely on it. Like the examples that you have already, we do have some properties that might deserve it, but how swiftly you want to move on that versus how long to take to discuss, refine, and give all the thought you want into it. I leave that to you.
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward. It sounds like a tool that can be in our toolbox, and it seems silly to not have it when we're given that power by the state. It would let us address things that have come up. I am, it's October, and there are some objectives that we set for this year. This was not on that list. I'm not saying that it doesn't need to happen, but I'm saying there are things that we said we wanted to do this year that we haven't done. The year's coming to a close, so I'm interested in moving, but maybe not like belaboring, right? I think there's some other things that we said we do, so it'd be good to move forward swiftly, I suppose.
Agree? I mean, budget season, right? I mean,
I
so
wanna
budget's
move
out of comp plan.
Expeditiously, but I want to make sure it's done well.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we all,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, sounds good.
So, I'm not sure what that looks like. I don't know what that means. Do you know what I mean, like as a timeline? I know that we've got budgets. I know we've got some other things on the, that we're trying to move with. So I think that you guys would know better as to, you know what I mean, what is even possible at this point.
Yeah.
With the priorities that we have, right? So I'm, you know, yes, let's move forward as quickly as we can without pushing anything else back.
I mean, it sounds like we were in agreement, there's maybe a few things to flesh out and like maybe bake into the drafted ordinance and then send to Tim and then and that's the process, right? We've already got that committee established, we'll just be adopting it.
I think it's a accomplishment enough to be able to bring this forward in some clear form for you to be able to consider. So I think that's a leap ahead of just being able to have your discussion on that. So I'm not going to be, I'm happy with whatever pace
Right.
moves this along wisely.
So we'll move forward with it and fit it into the different council meetings as time allows. And again, not to push back anything else to make this a priority, but if it fits in naturally, then we will fit it in.
Can we set like a goal by the end of the first quarter of 2025? Does that feel reasonable?
And if it happens
Mhm.
sooner, that's great, but if it
Yep.
doesn't, then we'll make sure we fit it in at some point before then.
Oh, I say the day after the budget.
The day after budget. Okay, well, we've got 2 days here, can we get it in, right,
As long as it's-
right in between there, so. All right. Okay, resolution authorized submission fiscal year 2024 CDBG applications. Can I have a motion to authorize?
I
So-
move. Oh. I'll second that.
Discussion.
So this year's CDBG application is a relatively simple one, like 3 activities on it: administration, code enforcement, and the Water Street Stormwater Management Project. Included in your packets is a cost breakdown of those. The administration is around $56,000. That's our contractual obligation to the county on behalf of the county. The city's portion then makes up the rest. Code enforcement, traditionally we do this every year to pay for the 2 part-time exterior code enforcement inspectors. It's been bumped up to $60,000 to pay for the interior code inspector who is also part-time. Water Street Management, Stormwater Management Project, if you recall, on August 13th, when council agreed to the modification of fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23 CDBG contracts, this $195,000 moves forward to help us close out what has become a multi-year project for the stormwater work on Water Street. As I said in August, the remainder of that project will be funded through city stormwater funds.
Anybody have any questions? All right. Roll call?
A resolution of the Council of the City of Meadville authorizing the submission of the 2024 Community Development Block Grant application and adopting the 3-year Community Development Block Grant Plan. Myers,
Aye.
Terrella,
Aye.
Vogel,
Aye.
Kinder.
Aye. Public comment on non-agenda items?
Yes. This evening, we have Donald Beck. So, Mr. Beck, you're welcome to speak.
Hey, what you talking about? Wait, I'm really up on it now, everybody else but me. Well, I got a complaint about the sidewalk in front of the welfare office. It's got at least an 8-inch dip between the 2 pieces of the sidewalk. And I was standing there here a little over 2 weeks ago, and I was talking across the street to Meisner. He had a funeral going on at the church. And when I got done talking to him, I went ahead. I didn't know that sidewalk would dip down like that, but I went ahead with this. It bent this whole wheel here. This is all this is all bent and you can't fix it. And, I fell, some lady come down, bless her heart, she come through the stop sign and she wheeled right over there and got over there and was helping me get back up again, you know. And I got back up and limped around, I'm still limping, but this whole side of this leg here got all black and blue pretty good. You know, when you get old, everything don't work right, you know. But I don't know why, and she went in and reported it to the lady inside, but nobody seems to want to do anything. And nobody seems to know who's responsible. And I can't understand that either, you think, but we found out we think the city's responsible.
Actually, I think the owner of the building is responsible, and that's not the welfare department, it is a private investor who owns the building.
Well, that could be. We ain't found that out yet, but, I mean, the only thing I like to get a new machine out of it, is what I like to get. I'm not one to sue people, you know? But if I have to, I got some good lawyers here in town, I could, but I don't want to do that. I just thought, well, my leg's healing up a little bit, but this thing here is $250 for one of these things, and I feel whoever's responsible for that sidewalk should be more than glad to pay to have a new one. You can get them right over here to Plaza.
Yeah.
But it's awful, and they could just put a cone or two up there. Somebody else is gonna fall here pretty soon, and they're gonna get maybe hurt worse than I do. I mean, the whole trouble is the sidewalk that's there can be fixed. It don't need new sidewalk. All it needs is a backhoe in there and pick it up. Pour some cement underneath of it and it'd be fine. Make sure it's even. I've done a lot of them in my days. I've been a contractor for over 54 years in this town. He ought to know that. And I've done a lot of them, and I can see it can be fixed, but I don't like to see anybody else be getting hurt down there like I did. I took an awful fall. I hit my shoulder, my leg pretty bad, but it's just ignorant to just let it go without nobody coming out there and putting a couple cones or something and shut it off. Let them go around it if they have to for a day or so until they get it fixed. That's the complaint I got, but I don't know who to complain to.
Sure. First of all, it does sound like you know what you're doing. You sound like you were a contractor, right?
Yeah.
I'm really sorry that happened to you. I'm really sorry that happened to you. Marion, can we get the code enforcement down there to at least, right, start the process of that? I'm really sorry
I just
that
don't want to see some
Yeah.
kids or something come up through there and fall in a pile and get hurt. And
We don't want to see anybody fall.
no, that's what
right?
I say, let alone an old buck like me, but, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know why nobody's doing nothing. She's went in twice and hollered at them to see if nobody knows who's what and what's where. I don't understand it.
So we'll get a complaint down, we'll get the property maintenance guy to go down and get the owner, a citation or whatever, and we'll get that started. Thank you for coming in, because, right, like some of us, I haven't walked down in front of there in a little bit, but I will make my morning
Well-
walks and try to do better at getting
Yeah,
around
I
a
gotta
little
go
bit
down there and
further,
look at
but-
it because,
yeah.
you know, I just, somebody else is gonna get hurt worse than me, maybe, I don't know, but it's bad. It just, whew, at least 8 inches, I'm gonna say, the depth.
Yeah.
And the 2 slabs of cement are like brand new. All they need is raise back up again. Hook them like that, fill underneath them, they'd be just as good as new, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad you have an advocate to give them hell in there,
Oh,
right?
yeah, she's my helper, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
she does a lot for me. And we live right there at the Holland Towers, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
and, but I like to find out, I hope somebody would get back to me to find out. I think they should be responsible to fix this thing, if that, I'm not trying, like I say, I'm not trying to sue anybody. I'm just trying to get another cart for me to push around on. And so, That's what I'm here to complain about, so other than that, everything's okay.
Yeah, thank you again for coming in and being a good neighbor, right? Like you
Yeah, oh, yeah.
are here to let us know so that other people don't get hurt. So
Yeah.
thank you again
Yeah,
for
that's
being a
fine.
good citizen and a good
No
neighbor.
problem.
Do we have anyone else on the? Okay. So council member statements. Daniel, I think we'll go with you first.
Firstly, I want to thank you, Mr. Beck, for your concern. Always appreciate it. I am happy to have my application approved again. I'm happy to be back for one more year, and I'll make sure to communicate with the other former members to see what the situation is with them, whether they want to reapply or not.
Thank you. Gretchen?
I actually, well, Saturday was my birthday, and I had a really good birthday present. I went to a wedding, and one of the staff came out from the kitchen, and I kind of recognized her. And she said, I have to thank you, like 2 years ago, you knocked on my door about a rental registration program. I'm not gonna get emotional, but she was like, it's so great because my door's locked, I have a stove, and the heater works. And my landlord is like, so they're two single moms that live next door to each other. And she was like, they actually passed it, so she didn't even know I was on city council. She just remembered that I knocked on the door and said, how can we help? So that was the best birthday present ever, I have to tell you. I mean, it was like, I went back in, I was just like, wow, this is such a good life. But I also realized that it was the landlord, it was her speaking out, it was the people that were door knocking, it was staff. Just think about, I have no idea how many hours that Gary put into that, because it was a many year process, and prior councils had worked into that. And I know Jim was maybe not quite the process we were on it, but I think we're getting there. So, thank you to everyone. I mean, this is the best gift ever.
Jim?
Oh, thanks. Well, happy birthday, Gretchen.
Yeah, happy
Thank you.
birthday.
Just like to thank everybody who worked to get the SAFER grant. That's a tremendous benefit to the community. Appreciate the work that you put into it. That's all.
Jim?
Yeah, no, I echo all of this. Yeah, I think that the rental inspection program, like we're seeing, the rollout was, was kind of tense, but it's underway and folks are having their homes inspected for basic health and safety. And that is great, and that's a huge step, and yeah, it is a lot for staff, so thank you all for letting that and pushing through. Yeah, thanks Mr. Beck for coming, also sorry that happened, and hope, I don't know that, I don't know if sidewalks are counted as public nuisance, but right, hopefully if we can kind of start taking care of the things that are dangerous for folks in our community, and everybody can kind of pitch in, and even if they live or are taxed at 107 East 10th Street in Erie, Pennsylvania, they maybe will, put the effort that they need to into their property to fix up. So appreciate that you're here. So yeah, we can all contribute what we can. I'm so glad that you're here at the table, Daniel. So glad to have our junior council folks back. And it sounds like there might be at least one opening. There might be some others if we don't have junior council, some of the other members attending. So hopefully folks, all of the young people watching tonight, will apply, but spread the word. I have some questions too that I want to pose to our first cohort of junior council folks to kind of understand a little more about your experience. So, but I'll go out on a limb to say that it was an experience, hopefully an educational one, hopefully it was something you learned from. So it would be great to have some more junior council folks join us this year. And this Friday is Witches Walk, downtown Meadville. It's first Friday. And this is a big fundraiser for the Meadville Independent Business Alliance. And it's a lot of fun. So I've got family that's gonna come up, and will participate and enjoy downtown Meadville. For Witches Walk, you do need a ticket for the event if you want the goodies, and all the free stuff. But it's worth it. And There's also some theater going on at the Academy. And I'll also plug, there's a Cranky show up at Allegheny. Be working a puppet on Sunday matinee. Lots going on.
Lots going on.
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah, so thank you, Autumn. Gretchen, happy birthday. I love you, of course. I'm so happy to be friends with this lady. It's so wonderful. And thank you for that story because it is beautiful, right? Like, it was hard work and the people here in this city care about each other, as we can see. Mr. Beck is here. He's caring about people, right? And other people that live here who he doesn't even know, but he doesn't want to get hurt. So right, that is the value. That is our values, right? We care about each other here. And I heard another story today at the domestic violence event across the way of a woman who had been in a situation, right? A relationship that was not, that was very, very, very sad. And she said when she called for help, the police came and they said, I will take you to safety. And all she could do, and I won't get emotional, but all she could do is just be so thankful for the police, right? And then women's services, right? So as we're thanking the people who work here, right, we remember that they are doing their job the best that they can, and they're human beings, and when our police come, they have been called, right? And they're there to do their jobs the best they can. Same with our fire department. And it's so exciting to get more wonderful firemen and more people that work at this city. Because so far I haven't met a bad one yet. So I'm just really thankful to be a part of the city, a part of my friends and the people who work here. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Third, fourth, fifth.
Roll call.
Myers,
Aye.
Roa,
Aye.
Vogel,
Aye.
Kinder.
Aye.
We're good.